Welcome back, you guys. This is going to be a short video on soldering, and specifically soldering using a breadboard. Most of you guys have your LM386 amplifiers prototyped, and what I want to do is just give you a couple of pointers here on soldering on breadboards. A lot of people call this fun. It's really nice and clean soldering, and I think you'll enjoy this. So let's get started. First of all, before we do any soldering at all, we're going to need to make sure we have a prototype breadboard circuit. And so this circuit right here is just one that I made up. It doesn't do anything. Your actual circuit should be something that you know works. It does what you want it to do, and you've got it all sorted out before you even think about soldering it. So let's just imagine that this is sort of a circuit that we thought we wanted to solder up. We wouldn't, but let's imagine that we did. First of all, let me just point out a couple of things. This circuit right here is very sloppy, and I wouldn't solder this the way it is. That'll make it get right into the Hall of Shame. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these couple of wires here. This wire, for example, might go to the positive rail. That one's okay, but I could really shorten it up and make it a lot neater looking. The other thing is that this is, for example, this might be a ground connection. And you can see that, first of all, it's red. The physics of that is okay. Red wires, black wires, green wires are the same. But boy, it'd be nice to color code that. When you get a more complicated circuit, you'll want that. And then the length of them, there's no reason to have these sort of, jumping up out of the board like that. So we'll want to trim that up first. And so, for example, I might be able to make this board look like this. So I've got a little short piece of a wire cut here, and I can put that like that, and that just looks a lot better. It's going to work a lot better, and it's easier to solder. So I would do that. I would probably take this one, and again, I've got some pre-cut wires, so I would replace that, for example, with this little short red wire. And not only does it, again, look better, but the red and the black would tell someone, if they looked at it, what the functions of those are. I would also want to trim this resistor here. This happens to be a 10K resistor, so I would want to trim that. And so I would just take some clippers, and I'm going to trim the ends of that off before I try to breadboard it. And I'll set that down in the board really nice and neatly like that. And immediately the whole thing is just, it's just cleaner looking, it's going to work better. And so that's the first thing I would recommend. Let me show you a couple examples of where we're going with this, and then we'll actually get to some soldering. For example, this is a breadboard. This is what to not do. There's a lot of a mess. The integrated circuits here are destroyed. They're not across the trough and so on. And so I'm going to show you how to do that better. So this is an example of what to not do. This is an example. This is actually a very nice example one of the students made about a year ago. This is actually an Arduino. You can see again what's nice about this immediately is it's got some color-coded wires. The capacitors down here are nice and trimmed and sit down close to the board. There's some header pins here, which we probably won't need on this project, but we do have some a nice long integrated circuit with some sockets here and the color-coded wires and so on. The resistors are neatly trimmed and so on. And if you look at the back of it, you'd see that the solder joints are very nice. So this is the kind of thing that we're looking to do. First of all, we have to figure out what are we going to put this on, what are we going to build it on. We're going to have a couple of types of breadboards. These are from Adafruit. They're very high quality. And I think if you look on the back, let me show you underneath. These are connected the same way the other breadboards, the plastic ones are. You can see that these are connected across as rails. You've got these rows of 5, there's a trough across the middle, and then the same thing up on the top. So once you have it in a regular breadboard prototype, you'll be able to, it's a one-to-one correspondence with one of these Adafruit boards. Not all boards are like this, but the Adafruit boards we supply are. These come in different sizes. The one that I showed you right here, the one on the left of the screen, that's a quarter board. You can probably put an amplifier on that. You can crowd things in there, which is actually not a bad idea. If you needed something larger, they do come in these half breadboard sizes, which cost a little bit more money. So if you don't need it, you wouldn't want to use that. What I'm going to do is go ahead and do some solder joints on this one here, so I don't waste a board. So let me show you how to connect up a couple of wires on here. So first of all, I've got my soldering iron here on my messy desk. I've got the heat setting on about 4 right now. When I'm doing this on a breadboard, I don't really need to have it maxed out on 5. I usually run it around 4, maybe 4.5 or so, something like that. If I look at my solder tip, I do want one that's pretty that's pretty pointy, so to speak. And if I look at that tip right now, it's a little bit dull and dingy. And so one of the lessons you have to get used to is keeping this thing clean. So I'm gonna keep putting it into this Brillo pad, and you can see immediately that it got cleaned up. That gives better heat transfer, and you want to keep your solder tips clean. Let's go ahead and grab some solder. The solder we're going to use in our lab is lead-free solder. So you get a spool like this. Some of you guys have already done this. I tear a little piece off. I've already done that, so I've got a little length of solder here that I'm going to use to solder. Whoops. I don't know if you can see that, but we'll get real close up when we do the soldering. Okay. So let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this board, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a socket in there. So if I want to connect this integrated circuit, I don't want to solder ever. I never want to solder an integrated circuit directly onto the board. When I do that, two things happen. Number one, when I solder that integrated circuit onto a board, it's going to overheat and I can damage it, and so I'm sunk right away. The other thing is, as you guys may be aware, sometimes integrated circuits go bad, and so once you solder it in there, it's good, it's permanent, and so you don't want to kind of paint yourself into a corner. Instead, what you would do is you would use an integrated circuit, a socket, and if I take a socket, what that'll allow me to do, and you can see I've put the socket into that Adafruit board. That allows me to connect the integrated circuit into that socket when I want to. You'll notice that when I'm doing this, I've got the notch over on this side. That notch corresponds to the notch that's actually on the integrated circuit that was in one of the previous videos. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this onto the board. Now, the way I do that is to actually solder from the other side. And so what I'm going to do is I'll put this on the table, and if you notice, those little pins are going to be, it's kind of hard to see, but there's those 4 pins on this side and on this side. Now I'm going to go ahead and solder those now. This is really nice, easy soldering. The trick is that when I do this, I want to make sure that I'm getting not only heat onto the ring, but also onto the little pin. And so I'm going to hold that solder tip, which I've again kept really clean, so it's really nice and hot. I'm going to kind of hold it at about a 45-degree angle with that, and I'm going to put the solder right on the other side, and what you'll see is it'll start melting right into that joint. And so if you look at it, that solder, first of all, there's not a big blob of it. It's not splashed all over the place, and it really just forms sort of a little volcano is the way I want to think about it. And if you see that, that's a real nice little solder joint right there. Let me do another one. Since this is my lunchtime, I'm having fun with this. And so you'll see that it'll kind of, well, I messed that one up good because I'm too far away. Let me go ahead and move that over here, and we'll solder that one onto there. You can see I'm trying to keep that tip onto the board and also onto the pin at the same time, and I run a little solder into that. You might want to practice this a few times before you get ready to go live with it, but it'll flow right in there. You can see those little volcanoes. I'll show you a close-up of it now. So those look pretty good. You don't want any sideward splash. Those look pretty good. So that's how you get the socket on there. I would go ahead and do all of these. I'll go ahead and do them now. You can see it's pretty quick to do that, a lot easier to solder than soldering wires on. So that's what I have now. Now let's go ahead and let's say we want to solder a little piece of wire onto this. So what I would do is I'd come back, and I'm going to go ahead and put that jumper wire that we mocked up. I'm going to go ahead and put that right here. Okay, so I want to solder that now. So what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll kind of hold it in, and I'm going to bend the back of it so that those leads will hold it into the board while I try to solder it. So hopefully you can see that what I've done is taken those leads, and hopefully you can see that I've taken those leads, and you can see that they're a little bit bent, so it holds it into the board here and here. And I'll go ahead and solder those just like I did a minute ago. And so I'll get my solder, I clean it up again, And I'm going to go ahead and put that solder in that joint. Goes really nicely like that. So what you see are nice little connections there. I don't know if you can see, those look like little volcanoes. Nice connections. There's no slop from one side to the other. Finally, one of the things that we like to do is you'll notice that those wires are sticking out of the board. So what I'll do is I'll take some of these surface cutters and I'll come along and I'll just trim that right off on both sides so that I don't have any excess sticking out then. And so that cleans it up really nicely, if you can see that. Okay, so you don't want to leave the excess wire hanging out, and I think you can see those nice solder joints. So that's really it. You just keep soldering things in. You want to make sure you've got everything tested. Be very careful with it, because once you solder something in, it's going to stay there, and then it's much more difficult to fix. So you have to be very careful. Carpenters always say to measure twice, cut once, and that goes with breadboards too. So I appreciate y'all watching, and hopefully you'll enjoy doing soldering on breadboards as much as I do.